those drops and told me to pour them into John's wine, my husband's wine. When you told me to write a letter to Kat, telling her it was a Lannister.
That scream, and that specific letter, is the reason everyone you love in this show is dead. For 8 seasons, we focused on the wars, the dragons, and the Night King. But the truth is, the entire destruction of Westeros doesn't happen without that one tiny piece of paper. If that letter is never sent, Ned Stark never hunts for the truth. He never discovers the incest. He stays in Winterfell, and the War of the Five Kings never happens. Today, we aren't talking about the kings who fought the war. We're dissecting the true patient zero of the Game of Thrones apocalypse. And honestly, it's the definition of a perfect crime. I mean, sure, I'll talk about exactly how this deception recontextualizes the entire series in detail. But first, we need some context. On the surface, the realm seems untouchable. Robert Baratheon has held the throne for 17 years. The wars are over. The summer has lasted a decade. But this peace is an illusion. While King Robert rides north with his gold cloaks and his wine, thinking he is just going to visit an old friend, he is unknowingly racing against a silent assassin. Because the trap isn't waiting for them in King's Landing. The trap is being delivered to Winterfell. And the tragedy is this. The Starks think they are safe in the north. They don't realize that the war has already started, and the first shot was fired by family.
She says John Arryn was murdered. By the Lannisters. She says the king is in danger.
In many ways, this scene is a masterclass in storytelling, because it sets a trap for the audience, one we don't even realize we've stepped into until season 4. The showrunners use our own biases against us here. We know the Lannisters are villains. We just saw Jaime and Cersei in the tower. So when Lysa accuses them, we accept it as absolute fact. But look at the mechanism of the lie. It's brilliant. The letter is delivered in a box with a sigil of falcon. And more importantly, Maester Luwin confirms it is written in a secret language, a childhood code that only Catelyn and Lysa know. Why use a secret language? Because it bypasses logic and hits Catelyn purely on an emotional level. Your sister wouldn't lie to you. That is the assumption that kills House Stark. Lysa Arryn uses the bond of sisterhood as a weapon. She knows Catelyn trusts her implicitly. If this accusation came from anyone else, Varys, Pycelle, even Stannis, Ned would have been skeptical. He would have asked for proof. But because it came from family, Ned drops his guard. He accepts the call to adventure that leads him straight to his grave. And there it is, the fatal mistake. Ned thinks he is going south to solve a murder. He doesn't realize he is walking into a frame-up, orchestrated by the murderer herself. Now, let's talk about the murder itself. Jon Arryn didn't die of old age, and he wasn't stabbed in an alley. He was killed with the Tears of Lys. The Tears of Lys is a rare, expensive poison. It's clear, tasteless, and leaves no trace. It mimics a sickness of the bowels, a sudden violent stomach fever. It is a coward's weapon. It's a weapon for someone who wants to kill, but doesn't want to watch the light leave the eyes. And who had access to Jon Arryn's wine? Who was there to comfort him while he died? His wife.
The seed is strong, I think it was.
The seed is strong.
We spent years thinking the seed is strong was Jon Arryn trying to expose Joffrey's parentage, and it was. But Lysa wasn't killing him to hide the truth about Joffrey. She didn't care about the incest. She killed him for a reason that is both incredibly petty and tragically human. She killed him because her husband was planning to send her son away. Jon Arryn planned to foster young Robin Arryn with Stannis Baratheon at Dragonstone. He wanted to toughen the boy up. For Lysa, a woman whose entire identity was wrapped up in her fragile, sickly child, this was a death sentence. So she reached for the poison. But here is where the story shifts, from a crime of passion to a cold-blooded conspiracy. Because Lysa didn't come up with this idea alone. This is where we have to talk about Petyr Baelish.
Fight every battle, everywhere, always, in your mind.
If Lysa is the gun, Littlefinger is the finger on the trigger. We all know Littlefinger is a manipulator, but this specific scheme, this is his masterpiece. He didn't just ask Lysa to kill her husband. He asked her to start a war. I have to pause here. We need to take a second to appreciate the sheer audacity of the writing in this moment. This reveal happens in Season 4, Episode 7. That means for 3 entire years, for over 30 episodes, the showrunners, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, sat on this secret. They let us believe the Lannisters killed Jon Arryn. They let us build entire theories around Cersei's guilt. They never cheated. They never slipped. And then, in one screaming confession from a jealous aunt, they recontextualized the entire series.
My father, my husband, my sister, they all stood between us and now they're all dead. That's what happens to people who stand between Peter and me.
This is a masterclass in storytelling. Why? Because great storytelling isn't just about surprising the audience. It's about betraying the audience's assumptions. They gave us the answer in the very first episode. The poison, the letter, the motive, but they made us look the other way. They trusted that when the reveal finally dropped, it wouldn't just be a cheap shock. It would force us to replay the entire show in our heads, and realize we had been watching a different story all along. He knew Lysa was the perfect tool because she was invisible. Nobody suspects the grieving widow. Nobody suspects the crazy aunt. He used her obsession with him to fracture the realm. He knew that if the Starks blamed the Lannisters, chaos would follow. And as we know,
Chaos is a ladder.
the letter was the first rung of that ladder. But this context also solves another mystery that bothered viewers back in Season 1. Remember when Catelyn arrived at the Eyrie with Tyrion Lannister as her prisoner? She expected her sister to be an ally. Instead, Lysa was furious. She was paranoid. She was unhinged. At the time, we just thought she was crazy. But now that we know the truth, her reaction takes on a much darker logic. Lysa wasn't just crazy, she was terrified.
Warning me to stay away from them, not to bring one here.
She knew she had framed the Lannisters for a murder she committed. She knew she was living a lie. And now, her sister shows up dragging a Lannister right to her doorstep? Of course she panicked. If Tyrion started asking questions, or if the Lannisters sent an army to get him back, Lysa's entire house of cards, and her life with her son, would come crashing down. To truly understand why Lysa was so susceptible to this fear, and to Littlefinger's manipulation, we have to look at the books. In her youth, Lysa was actually pregnant with Littlefinger's child. When her father found out, he forced Lysa to drink moon tea, an abortifacient. He forced her to kill her own unborn child. When you understand this context, her obsession with Sweet Robin makes terrifying sense. She had one child taken from her by force. She wasn't going to let anyone, not even her sister, put her remaining son in danger. And this leads us to the final, devastating irony of Lysa Arryn's life. She committed the perfect crime. She fooled Ned Stark. She fooled Catelyn. She fooled the entire audience for 4 years. She did it all to secure a future with the only man she ever loved. And in the end, that man didn't just reject her.
I have only loved one woman. Only one. My entire life. Your sister.
It is one of the most brutal kills in the series. Not because of the violence, but because of the truth. Lysa started the War of the Five Kings to get Peter Baelish, and Peter Baelish killed her to get to Sansa, the daughter of the woman he actually wanted. So the next time you rewatch Season 1, pay attention to that letter. Don't just look at it as a plot device. Look at it as the most lethal weapon in Game of Thrones. It wasn't Valyrian steel. It wasn't dragonfire. It was a lie, whispered by a manipulated woman, into the ear of a trusting sister. Jon Arryn was the first body, but because of that letter, he was just the first of 100,000. But if Lysa was the pawn, Littlefinger was the player. And even the best players make mistakes. Click this video to see the one tiny slip-up Littlefinger made, the one that eventually cost him his own throat. I'll see you there.